Morning all. This is the encounter I really wanted to see from last year when people were saying about Nakamura just being an ICC king. You know, could he do it right against Carlsen? We saw that he did actually beat Carlsen in the second game, and I had the complete game score for that. And it's thanks to AL, who's gone through the video footage of this game, that we've got the complete game score now available. I've verified it according to the video footage of the game, and here it is. Okay. So in that very first encounter, Magnus playing black played e5 against e4, and after knight f3 knight c6 we see a return to the old Guioco piano. So bishop c5 here. I think it's the black move which signifies it's Guioco piano actually as the opening. So c3. So white plays conventionally to try and build that centre. Knight f6 and now d3. I think this is the Guioco pianissimo, the even quieter variation, but it's not so quiet. It's misnamed really. It can be very violent. So knight bd2, bishop a7. The bishop's neatly tucked on this diagonal. I think white's white has a kind of less theoretical position here, but I think it's quite pleasant for black. Bishop e6 offering double pawns, but if those double pawns they come at price, black would have f-file compensation, control of d5. In particular for Blitz, I reckon that the f-file compensation is going to be very dangerous. And also with h3, there'll be knight h5 to f4 later, with g3 being harder because h3 is being played. So far, so good for black. I think bishop c2. It looks already as though Magnus has fully equalised. Now he liberates in the centre with d5, extending the scope of his pieces even more, and also starting to put pressure on white's light squares with this, because he has the opportunity now for d takes e4. Okay, so it's like he's playing against a reversed Philidor, which is very interesting. But here it seems, black's pieces are actually, very nice, and he strengthens his control not only of the d file now with rook a8, but now this very, very nice move is played. I think knight e8 with the idea that later f6 to support e5, queen f7, and start to try and get into these light squares, and also knight d6 helps the cause, putting pressure on these squares as well. So knight e3 and now f6. So there is a slight concession with the d5 square for black here, but it's not that exploitable at the moment. So queen f7, and it's also being covered adequately. Now Naka, I think he goes a bit crazy on the queen side. These weaknesses I think he sort of regretted later. After b4, Magnus actually did a kind of positional exchange shack just to weaken white's c4. He gave up this seemingly, very positive dark square bishop on the diagonal. But he's trying to get his knights, very strong now. Knight d6. And now, after queen c5, okay, white, is threatening to gain space, but there's no real concrete targets. In fact, black's kind of made of concrete on this particular queen side. After knight b8, b5, now after this you see that the c5 square with these knights is kind of a good restraint square, and it's only the dark square bishop that's going to be able to defend c5 really. I mean this will take two moves. So we see now Magnus taking control of a critical strategic square. b6 marks the square and starts to fix white's pawns on the queen side, and now a5 evicting that queen back. Okay, queen b1, yeah, it's useful for potentially putting more pressure on f5. So if a knight lands on f5 later, white can take like that. But otherwise it seems white's getting passive here and positionally outplayed, because look at this c5 square. Bishop a3 and now rook f8. Okay, unpinning, because the knight really wants to go here, then here, and then black will have a nice strategic grip on c5. So knight b7. Okay, I guess knight b3 is also like preparing a battle if needed potentially, but it doesn't. It pretends to go there. It's also got options like this, and it actually uses this option in particular to go to f5. So it's not about protecting c5. That would be too passive anyway now. So knight dc5. So Magnus is getting the better of it. After that pawn exchange earlier, he's got a lot of pressure on these light squares. This knight is also hitting the centre and a4 continually, so it's tying down the bishop a bit as well. Knight e3, rook d2. a temporary invasion. It's evicted now. Okay, now rook d7, but he's cleverly, you know, preparing, doubling up with a gain of tempo, you know, because the bishop now is not great on c1. So knight f5. So Magnus doubles. So he clearly looks better, visually better. Of course, he doesn't want any major tactical accidents like g6, knight h6 check. I know it's blitz chess, but you know, that would be kind of embarrassing. So king h2, he plays actually bishop c4, so he's coming into these light squares. If he can exchange off this guy, d3 is going to be even weaker. Now f4, which does weaken Naka's position a bit further, but it does liberate the e pawn, which seems to be a bit dangerous later. But the way Magnus plays it now, after knight d3, he didn't really seem to be in too much tactical pressure. He's putting a lot of pressure on the white position. He takes that dark square bishop now. Okay, he's swapping his c5 lovely looking position, and he's still better. That possession of the d file, he's content with that. He's got pressure on the e pawn now as well. So queen e1, queen e5, and also, you know, the queen's like hitting out in all directions. Knight c5. There's no threat of mate. The rook's protecting as well as threatening to come here, but it is tied to g7 at the moment. Knight e3, not anymore though. Bishop e6. Rook f2, offering a trade of queens, which Naka takes. Now king g8. So the king is preparing maybe to get into the centre now. So rook d2. The king comes into the centre. Bishop b3, further weakening white's position. These pawns are slightly weak now. If the bishop can be just exchanged off and the knight returns back, then a4 is going to be weaker, e4 is going to be weaker. But Naka does take, he hasn't got too many choices. Now knight c1, forcing the rooks off. So we have a rook and knight ending now for the remainder of the game, for a large part of the remainder of the game. So king f3, king e6, knight f5, hitting g7, the g pawn moves, check, king steps to d6, rook a1, hitting the knight, check, and then winning a pawn. So at the moment, Magnus has just snatched a pawn. Okay, but you know, this is not over yet. Check, knight c5, now check, and now Naka's seemingly getting a little bit of play. So rook d4, okay, but he's under fire. His a4's like dropping off now. It's these weakening moves earlier on the queen side. He's regressing them now. Check, 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 and now knight c6 again. But here with the king on e8, it's safe now to play rook takes a4. So Naka's going quite a few pawns down. Although he's winning now the c7 and h7 pawns soon. Sorry, not now. After knight e6, that's defending that. But he's already in this position 2 pawns down, so he's struggling already. Okay, king g7, rook e8. So something has to give here because white, you know, can't keep on just attacking. So Magnus, he's prepared, I think now, for this though. e5 though, and it starts to look as though, you know, is there some counterplay here? But Magnus just takes on e5. Okay, check. And this is where, you know, c7 drops off, and then h7. But the thing is, Magnus is also taking g2 now, and all he has to remove now is b5 and h3, which he does so pretty soon. So knight d6 hitting b5. Okay, and then he's also eyeing now h3. So both of those pawns are about to be eliminated. Rook b7, now knight d6. Now check. Took on h3, so all of white's pawns have been eliminated. Okay, rook b7, rook b3. So Magnus is just 4 pawns up, but this attempt to get a pawn back is refuted now. Knight takes a5 on move 77. Magnus just plays this move to simplify, knight c5. So if knight takes b3, then knight takes b7, 3 pawns up in that knight and pawn ending. So here Naka resigned. If rook b8, then there's b takes, and the knight's protecting the rook. Okay, let's have a look at that game in overview and summary. So it was Guioco piano, and with black seemingly getting a lot of light square pressure, then a nice knight on c5, sealing and fixing white's queenside pawns, and then later it seems this next episode was white sort of playing even on the king side and leading to simplification though. So Magnus just calmed it all down, simplifying, and he held the positional trump cards for a long while. And this endgame, you know, the white pawns, which are immobilized, and black's active pieces, they start getting mopped up a bit. Although there is a sort of invasion by white as well, but it's sort of ineffectual. It started to look a little bit of, you know, concerning here, but you know, black is 2 pawns up, so he doesn't mind losing c7 here. But the thing is, his b5 and g2 are now weak, so he sort of starts to lose those two as well. And then h3, so he's lost all his pawns now. And this final scene is this with knight c5. I hope you enjoyed that. Okay, but the video from yesterday, Naka did get his revenge in their second game. So they both won with the black pieces. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.